live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 2054. Get to cross that one of memories. So today started off like a typical Sunday. We got up, we went for our walk, came home, had breakfast, and then we got started on the day. I started with deep cleaning my kitchen, which I try to do at least once a month, deep clean it. The funniest, I have to tell you about Zeffie. The funniest thing with Zeffie is that she likes to go looking for, after you have made food in the kitchen, she likes to sniff around the floor and go and get any crumbs or tidbits that may have fallen off the counter. And so one of the things on cleaning my kitchen is that it gets swept. It gets swept every couple of days anyway. But I get out the broom and I'm sweeping it up and all of that sort of stuff and get it all picked up and put away and all that sort of thing. And I turn around and here's Zeffie sniffing underneath all of the counters where you've got that little kickback thing, and she's sniffing along all the cabinetry, trying to find little tidbits. I says, they're gone. No. So she's making sure I cleaned everything up. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, got the kitchen deep cleaned and then got started into sorting again as well. And came across a few treasures today. And so we're going to have a look at some of those. But my goal today was to fill the recycle bin. It's got about this much room left at the top. So we're going to do a little more tonight before I put the trash cans out to see if we can get that recycle bin full. So we've been busy today. We've been busy. There's several boxes. There was a pile of boxes just outside the door here, just on the other side of that door, which are now gone, completely emptied. Most of the stuff that was in those boxes is now in the recycling bin, which is yay. There is stuff in the there's the donate box is full. Yay! The to keep stuff has been consolidated into one container. Although, hang on, there was one box that was not empty because it was all genealogy stuff. Will I go through it beforehand? Yes. But I had a plastic container that was partially full. It is now nicely packed. And inside that container, I actually found our wedding album. So wedding album from Brad's my wedding. Well, I've got two. That was back in December of 98. And so I did take time out to sit down and go through that, and got a little emotional doing that because it was such an amazing day. We had such an incredible time. We had an incredible event I think we had like 30 to 40 people there. It was awesome. El Ciellos outdid themselves with the food, with the service, with just making sure everything went off for us without a hitch, because we actually had our ceremony there and followed it by the reception. And it was just absolutely magical. Couldn't have asked for a better venue with such an incredible staff. It was just, and looking through those photos, it brought all those memories back of that day and how incredible it was. So did get a little emotional about that. So found a couple of so the other memory thing I'm going to talk about in a minute, but in the meantime, I'm going to show you a couple of really cool things I found. I have no idea where this came from. I have not done any translation on it. It's in some language that I don't understand. So, but this is a very interesting map. I have no idea what date it is supposed to be. But yeah, I don't even know where I got it from. That's the weird part. I don't know where it came from, but this is a map of the world. And if you look on this map of the world, especially down in this area here, there is no Australia or New Zealand down there. They hadn't been discovered at the time that this map was drawn. See, that whole area is completely empty. Now, what was interesting is, have a look up here where it says America. Up here. That says Mexicana right here. It's got America here and it says Mexicana here. But this is the whole continental, this is the whole Northern America area here. So I have no idea when this map is what dates this map is supposed to be. It was in one of the boxes today. And I don't know. But what is interesting is in the middle piece up here, you've got all of the horoscope stars, and then I'm not exactly sure what's these ones down here are, but yeah, if anybody can read what's up top there, across the top there, and can translate it for me, I'm probably going to throw it into a Google Translator. The problem is I don't know what language it is. I'm not even going to pronounce it, but I can't find a year on here or anything. But the artwork around it is really cool. And so I thought, this is really cool, but I don't know what it is. So yeah, we're going to have to figure it out. There's a couple of ships there in the ocean and the big galleon ships, and as they're exploring and things. But that was a really cool thing I found today. I've got no idea what it says, but we're gonna figure it out. Then the other thing I've got here, it cost me $1.39 because it's got the price tag still on it. And this I got, and I can tell you exactly when I got this. It was 2004. And we did this road trip. My parents were over here for Christmas, and we did a road trip. And the road trip went from our place in Virginia. We went up through Gettysburg. We went all the way around the top end of Pennsylvania. So if you take Pennsylvania, you take the road that goes all the way around. We stopped at York and went to the Harley-Davidson factory, which I didn't, and I will confess, I did not know it was there. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision. We're sitting my mum and I are sitting in the back of the minivan. Brad's driving, Dad's in the passenger seat. Feeling a little uncomfortable because that's usually the driver's seat for him. But anyway, so he's up there, and Mum and I are in the back there, and I pull up the atlas, the road map, paper version for those of you who have only used a digital version. This was a paper version of the map. And I'm looking along trying to figure out where we are, and I come across, it says York, and then it's got Harley-Davidson factory on the map. And so I point to my mum, and I said, my mum says, pointing at my dad, because he loves motorcycles. And so Mum's like, and so I said to Brad, I says, can you, and I calculate about where we are. I says, we're coming up to a town called York. Do you think you could take the exit there? And Brad's like, why? We're going to Lancaster. We're going to Blue Ball. And I said, figure we might stop at the Harley-Davidson factory. What do you think? My dad's eyes went. So we stopped at the Harley-Davidson factory. We got there just in time as the tour was starting. Now, normally they put you into a room, you watch a video about the history of Harley-Davidson, then they take you on the tour. But we arrived as the tour was getting ready to leave. So they put us on the tour, and off we went through they take you through the factory. They make every part of that motorcycle there at the factory. We got to see the whole thing from start to finish. We even heard, which I thought was the coolest part of the whole trip, is that we got to hear a Harley-Davidson fire up for the very first time. After being through all the assembly line and everything else, it goes into this room. The guy takes this hose, which is gasoline, puts it into wherever he puts it into it, not into the tank. It does not go through the tank because the tanks have to, the motorcycles have to be shipped with empty tanks. So he bypasses that and puts it so it goes straight into the engine and stuff, fires it up, and then he basically rides the bike, and it's on the front wheels on rollers, the back wheels on rollers, and he just starts it up very gently. And you've got a speedometer thing up here where you can see how fast he's going, and he's listening. He's listening for the different sounds that it's making. And it was just amazing to watch. And then we went and then we finished the tour and we went and saw the video afterwards, which was very interesting. Then they have the Harley-Davidson store. So we went in there and had a browse, and they had a couple of bikes. They had a Softail and a touring bike sitting out in front of the shop that you could actually sit on. And so we got pictures. So we got pictures of us sitting on those bikes. It was pretty cool. And then we continued on to Blue Ball, which is where we had the bed and breakfast, and we stayed there for a couple of nights. And actually, I think we were there 3 nights. No, it was 2 nights. We had a whole day. And when we got there, it was dinner time, and so the guy at the bed and breakfast directed us up the road to where there was a buffet place. And so we went up there. It was underneath the place. They had a 4,500 square foot? No, it was bigger than that. Must have been 45. Oh, can't remember the size of it. They had this. The upstairs, they had the restaurant and this huge buffet. It was beautiful food. It was awesome food. And we saw a lot of Mennonites coming in. And there was a way that you could tell the difference with the shape of the hat. One's round and one's got a heart shape. And I think it's the Amish that have the heart-shaped one and the Mennonites have the round one, or it's the other way around. I can't remember which. And some of them had kids dressed in normal everyday teenage clothing, and they were doing their whatever it is when they hit a certain age, they get to have a year or two off to go and explore the world. And then they come back and decide, and then they either come back and commit to their religion or they go off and do whatever. There's some word for that. I just totally can't remember. Yeah, so after that, there was downstairs, completely below the entire restaurant, kitchen area, and everything else is a massive gift store. And so Mum and I went down there browsing all that while Brad and Dad went and got the car and they were going to meet us out front. I think we were down there for about 20 minutes and we hadn't even seen a quarter of the store. I don't even remember if we bought anything from there. But anyway, we went back and got back into the van. And Brad says, oh, we got to show you something. And we're sort of like, okay. And Dad and Brad got curious. It's like, where do they put the horse and buggies for those that travel by horse and buggy? So we go around and here's this long shed and they pull the horses get to go under the shelter area while the buggy sits out and exposed to the elements and things. And they had this whole thing there where they could tie up the horses and everything else. And there's actually a couple of buggies in there. So that was kind of interesting. But then the next day we did this touring thing. We went to, the pretzel place. We did do Hershey's. No, we must have had the bed and breakfast about 3 nights because we did Hershey's. And then we went to, and this is something I don't get about Hershey's. Okay, they have the gift store there where you can buy all this stuff. And Mum was looking around and thinking of things to go back. I says, don't worry about it. And she says, why not? I says, because I'll take you to the supermarket when we get back home and it'll be like less than half the price of here. And she's like, really? I says, yeah. I said, because I know I've seen those. Unless it's something that is not in the grocery store, don't bother looking at it and buying it. We can get it when we get back. But people were loading up their shopping carts with stuff from the Hershey store. And a lot of the stuff that they had in their carts, they could have got at the supermarket for less than half the price of what they were charging at Hershey's. And I thought, okay, interesting. But anyway, so we also went to Lancaster. We spent a day in Lancaster and looking around in there. And we went to this, is it the visitor center? We went to this really cool little shop and stuff. And I was looking for all these different things. And I came across this really cool little book. And it cost me $1.39. It's a recipe book for pies and pastries. It's called Pennsylvania Dutch Traditional Recipes for Pies and Pastries. And this is this little book. Look how cute that is. I think it's about the same as a 4x6 postcard. Hang on. We have the measure. Yeah, about 5 3/4 by 4.5. Okay. But this is a cool little cookbook. Look, there's 4 recipes to a 2-page spread. Isn't that cute? Look how cute that is. So I have never tried any recipes in here, but I did find this today and I thought, oh, shoe fly pie, apple butter pie. And they've even got a recipe there for pie crusts. So we found this little cute book and I totally forgot I had it and I found it in a box today. And yeah, so, they have funnel cakes. I love funnel cakes. They have a funnel cake recipe. Yes. Might have to have a look at this close. But I did bake today. Yes, I stopped for lunch. And then I thought, I am going to, and I've had this recipe sitting on the counter for a while, and it was, well, not a while, a few days. But yeah, so that was really cool to find that, and just to bring back the memories of that trip that we had. And then from there, we went down to Philadelphia, and Brad went up, and because one thing Brad had always said, he said, if we go to Philadelphia, he says, I want a real Philly cheesesteak. And so he went to the doorman of the hotel we were staying in, and he says to him, he says, where is the best Philly cheesesteak that I can get that the tourists don't know about? And so he directed us to this little hole. He says, there's a hole in the wall, and Brad's like, perfect. Directed us to this little hole in the wall. We got there, we parked the car, we went in, the place was packed. It was packed. The guys are behind the counter. They've got bread rolls up their arms as they're stuffing them with the different things. And then but these Philly cheesesteaks were amazing. They were absolutely awesome. And so Mum and Dad got their very first Philly cheesesteak, and we had a great time with that. And Brad was happy he got to have his Philly cheesesteak. And then we were staying at the Courtyard at the town square, and when you go out the back door and go diagonally across, it went into the big market there that's at Philadelphia. And we did all the Liberty Bell and Independence, or we did all that. But we had been told about the market. So we went across the back corner of the market and diagonally across to the market. And we had dinner. No, we had the Philly cheesesteaks for dinner. And we went there for breakfast the next morning. Well, we're wandering around this place. And of course, most of the places are open because it's all freshly baked food. The bakeries are open and all that. And we come across this stand that's run by the Mennonites. And it was $5 for a plate. Well, Dad and Brad decided they wanted that. Mum and I were sort of like looked at the plates and went, no. They were packed. These plates were piled high of food. And so we went and we found a bakery that had those tarts that had the Boston cream in them with the fruit on top, and then it's all glazed. And they were about this big. And we were able to get a cup of tea as well. And so we sat at a table and had that. And then the guys eventually caught up with us. They were full to bursting from all the food that they had just consumed. It was a full breakfast platter with eggs and sausage and bacon and hash browns, and I don't know what else was on that plate. I think there might have been waffles on there too, or waffles or pancakes. I don't know. It cost them $5 a plate. And so we grabbed some stuff for lunch, and then we left there and we went into New York City, and we stayed at the Marriott Marquis, which is right there in Times Square. And we were there for 3 nights over Christmas. And we had dinner reservations at Serendipity. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Serendipity, they go to this restaurant called Serendipity 3, and it's famous for their frozen hot chocolates. And so I always said to Brad, if we go to New York, I want to go there and have a frozen hot chocolate. And Serendipity is a comedy, a romance chick flick. But the inside of Serendipity looks nothing like what they have it in the movie. In the movie, it's all open and bright, and you go in and it's nothing like that. And we went up this narrow, rickety stairs that literally people can only go one way on these stairs. There's no room to pass on those stairs. And the waiters are coming up with trays full of food and everything else. And we're up there and we had a great time. And they only take reservations for dinner. So you have to order dinner. And so we just had frozen hot chocolates for our dessert. And it was really, really good. And we also went and saw the Blue Man Group at I think it was the Ascot Theatre, I think it's called. But that was another thing that Brad said, if we ever go to New York, I want to go there. We are sitting in the front row. This is how close we are to the stage. Brad's knees were touching the stage. And I'd warned my mum and dad that we were sitting in the front row and we would be given rain ponchos. And Mum says, why are we given rain ponchos to sit? And I says, because things will go flying. I says, they toss around all sorts of things like food and there's liquid flying around and all this. She said, well, can we pick it up and throw it back? This is my mum. This is her thinking. And we're sort of like, no. But when we got there, of course, it's very, very heavy on the base, and which can affect some people's heads and all of that. My mum's like, is this going to be like this through? And I says, yeah. But even with all the thumping going on, she thoroughly enjoyed it. We all enjoyed it. It was awesome. We got buried in the toilet paper at the end. Totally buried. I think you could just see our heads above the pile of paper that was at the front there. But we just had a blast. It was awesome. And we went down to Ground Zero and had a look at that. And this was in 2004. So went down and had a look at that. I think Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty were still closed at that time, but we went down to Battery Park and at the waterfront there and were able to see the Statue of Liberty over there, but you couldn't go there. I think it was still closed at that time, along with Ellis Island. So that's why we didn't go over there. Otherwise, that would have been a trek that we would have done. But we had a fantastic time there. It was awesome. So that's what that book brought back, the memories of that vacation. And then I found a couple of pieces of paper. And on it said, Mr. and Mrs. Brahms, 2002 New Zealand honeymoon tour accommodation itinerary. And got the address on the back. But this was our itinerary for when we went down to New Zealand. We took Brad down for the very first time. We did both the North Island and the South Island. Took him to places that we had lived. So we got to see some of those. We got to take him to see some really cool sites. And then this one here was the Mr. and Mrs. Brahms 2002. My parents sent us this, by the way. New Zealand honeymoon tour activities and indicative costs. So this is our itinerary with the calendars with our activities and things in there. And that was a blast, that one. that was a really cool blast. So they picked us up in Auckland, and we actually arrived 24 hours early. Yes, we arrived early. We spent some time in Auckland catching up with family and all that sort of stuff. Then we went down to Rotorua and stayed at a motel there, and we did the Rainbow Springs. And Rainbow Springs, you go in there, and it's and a lot of people do the Agrodome, but the thing with the Agrodome is that you miss. It's geared towards the tourists. Rainbow Springs is just more casual. It's not so touristy, and you don't get the big crowds like you do at the Agrodome. I don't know if it's still that situation now, but back in 2002, that's what it was like. So we went over to went to Rainbow Springs, where they did the sheep thing with the sheepdog show, with the sheep and the dogs, and doing all the corralling and put them in the things and all that sort of stuff. And then we walked through the actual Rainbow Springs area, where we got to see trout at different life stages. And we got to see a tuatara, which is the New Zealand, it's a reptile. It's a New Zealand reptile. It's not really a lizard, not really an iguana. It's a New Zealand native reptile. And got to see all sorts of things. And you can buy these little bags of pellets so you can actually feed the trout. And they've got beautiful walks through the trees and stuff like that. So I did that, and then that evening we went out to the Tamati Brothers Maori village, and that's a whole experience. Like, they picked us up at the hotel, at the motel, in the bus. It's door-to-door service, so they picked us up at the motel. They then took us to the visitor center, where we picked up more people. Then they took us out to the Maori village, and you have this whole experience. Like, you're there in front of the marae before you go in. And they have, and before you get there, you have to choose a chief on your waka. Our bus becomes the waka, and a waka is a Maori canoe. And so, but the bus becomes our waka. And so we had to choose a chief of the waka. And Brad ended up, the four of us are sitting in the back seat. Brad somehow ended up being the chief of the waka. So they then take all of the chiefs from their wakas and go and stand, and they've all got a guide with them. So the guides then take their chiefs and take them over to stand in a row for the challenge by the Maori warrior comes out and does this challenge. And the warrior chooses one of the chiefs to accept the challenge, for the challenge. And he's got his jeepers, total mind blank on thing. He's got his spear thing, and the Maori warrior gets down there and he goes like this, and he stops this short of Brad's crotch. I kid you not. I have it on video. And Brad, and of course, the chiefs have been prepped beforehand, like saying things like, you have to maintain eye contact with the warrior at all time, no matter what's going on around you. You have to maintain eye contact. And so Brad's like staring this guy down. He knows the spear's down there somewhere, just not sure exactly where. But he's maintaining eye contact, and he has to. And the warrior tosses the challenge, which is usually like a small branch, or a thing of leaves or whatever, and tosses it off to the side there. And then he has to, while maintaining eye contact with the warrior, then has to go over and pick up the challenge, maintaining eye contact the whole way. So the guide is guiding Brad over to the challenge. And so Brad has to trust the guy that he's going to get there in one piece without tripping over. The guide's trying to find the challenge himself, because he didn't see exactly where it landed, but they finally found it. And so he guides Brad down to pick it up and all of that sort of thing. And then we all get welcomed onto the marae and go in, and you get to see you go around all the different huts and things, and they tell you the traditions of the Maori and things like that. So you learn the haka in one, you learn how to spin pois in another. Poi is a flax ball on the end of a rope that you spin, and they have the short ones, and then they have the longer ones. And they show you how they learn how to fight, and you just get taken around and you learn a lot about the culture. Then they unearth the hangi, which is hangi is the food cooked inside in the ground. So they dig a pit, they have a fire, they heat up the rocks. They then put the rocks, once they're heated, they then put them in the bottom of the pit, and then they load the food in on top in baskets. And it's in the order of how long it's going to take to cook. The longer it takes to cook, the lower down in the pit it is. The least amount of time you're on the top, and then they bury the whole thing in dirt. They cover it all with flax and all this sort of stuff, flax and mats and all that, sacks and all that, and they bury it all. And then they unearth it. I will tell you, A luau comes close to what a hangi is like. So if you've had a luau, then you know how good the food is. But when you have a hangi, it takes on that earthy taste, and the meat literally falls off the bone and melts in your mouth. That's all I can tell you. And then they take you in, and we get to sit at these big long tables and everything. And I think it's the chiefs then have to get up first, be fed first. And then they take you table by table and all this sort of stuff. But it was very well done. They then did they did a concert before we went into before we got taken into the dining room. They did this Maori concert with the traditional songs and then the more modern ones. And then they had the poi dance. They had hakas done. And they take you in and you get fed, and then the bus drivers all get together and basically form a choir right there and then. And then we get back on our walkers and get taken back to our motels or back to the visitor center. It is a fantastic night. It is awesome. It's like about 3 hours from start to finish. It's about 3 hours from when you get picked up to when you get dropped back again. I love it. Then where did we go from there? Oh, we headed down to Wellington, where Mum and Dad were living at the time, and we were there for Christmas. Oh no, we went there for Christmas in March. We were supposed to arrive on March 16th. We arrived March 15th, and then we left home. We left for home on April the 8th. And we went and visited different places and different things. And when we were in Dunedin, we went to Ulverston, which is one of my favorite places to go. Yes, they have Larnax Castle, which is this castle, the only castle in New Zealand. Yes, it's pretty cool and everything else. The views up there are spectacular. I've only been there once when I was about 16. I went there and I was sort of like, yeah. And we had been to see Ulverston House the day before. I've been back to Ulverston House probably 4 or 5 times now. And I much prefer it over Larnax Castle. Now, Larnax Castle, don't get me wrong, is a fantastic place to visit and has a lot of history and all of that. As a 16-year-old, my impression is that we went to Ulverston House, which was a house that was built by a husband for his wife for a 25th wedding anniversary. And they had a son and a daughter who they all lived in the house together. The daughter never got married, but she died in 1966 and bequeathed the house to the town of Dunedin, and they have maintained it basically as a museum. The house, as you see it, is how they lived in it. Everything in the house is as it was when the family was living there. All the stuff that they had bought from all over the world, where they had bought back trinkets, bought back items from their travels and everything else, are still in the house. It is an incredible house to go see. It's like the first that had central heating. It had a intercom system. It was just like a lot of firsts and a lot of really cool innovations for the time of it was, the time that it was when it was built. Like I said, everything in the house. When we went over to Larnax Castle, we were going through a lot of empty rooms. Yes, the tile work was amazing and the artwork on the wall was pretty incredible. But at the time when we went through, when I was like 16, there were a lot of empty rooms, and there was nobody. It was a self-guided tour. There was really nothing that you had to say what this room was for or what it was or anything else. So I kind of felt a little let down after being to Ulverston House the day before. But so we took Brad through Ulverston House, and this is how much of an impression Ulverston House made on me. And I know I still have it, and it's probably in a box out there. But one of the things I did when we got back from that trip when I was 16 is that we had to write an essay. You know how when you start school, you got to write an essay about your summer vacation, blah, 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 blah. Or your vacation, whatever. I wrote, how many pages was it? Like 7 pages. 7 pages, double-sided. Except the last page was just single-sided, but the other 6 were all double-sided, of the tour through Ulverston House in detail, of what I could remember of it. And then the next time I went back, I read that piece before the next time I went back, just to refresh my memory, just to see. And then I compared the two as to how well did I remember that visit. And I was pretty spot on most of it. There's a couple of little details in there, but for the most of the part, it was pretty spot on. So I was pretty proud of myself, and I could probably still take you through there and everything else. Then we went down to Queenstown, and we went and stayed at Te Aonau. And from Te Aonau, we went up through. We took the road that went up through the Homer Tunnel into Milford Sound, and we did the cruise on the Milford Sound, which is always spectacular. And I have seen photos of it, but I have never ever seen the top of Midas Peak, which is a very well-known formation right there in Milford Sound. I have never seen it every time I have been there, it's misty, mysterious Milford, which means it's low cloud, it's misting a little bit, and it just has this mysterious feel about it. But one of the cool things that have been added since the last time I had been there, and the first time that Brad went there, is they had the aquarium. And the aquarium was this structure that was built, and it was attached to the land, but we got dropped off, and then we went inside this place, and you basically go down about 10 feet into the water, underwater, and you can see sea life and plant life. Sorry, as you're going down, you see the fresh water, and then you see the fresh water's here, and then and as you're going down, you've got windows that you can look out. The fresh water is one color, and then you get the ocean water. The salt water is a different color. So there's actually a layer of fresh water that sits on top of the ocean water. And if it gets too deep to threaten the sea life and the plant life there, the plants actually lower down further into the water. So the sea life comes down with it as well. So it doesn't get endangered of being suffocated by the fresh water, which I thought was a pretty cool. This was pretty cool thinking. So anyway, we're watching it, and we see the difference in the change in the color. Then we go down, we get to the observation thing, which is about 10 feet down, 10, 15 feet down. And we're looking at sea life and plant life that you don't normally see unless you're in way deeper water than what we were. For some reason in this area, in this fjord, there is something about the water there that you're able to see the sea life and plant life that is normally at several more feet down than what it was in this area here. So it's something very unique that a normal person gets to see, and most people can't. And most people won't get to see it unless they're in the right place at the right time with the right gear, the right scuba gear and everything else to be able to go and see this stuff. And I can't remember how many feet down you normally have to be to see this in its normal situation. But for whatever reason, in this fjord of Milford Sound, in this fjord, this sea life and this plant life does very well there. And so they put up this observatory so you could actually walk down to see it. And it was actually pretty cool. And then from Te Anau, we went up to Queenstown, and absolutely love Queenstown. It's got lots of really cool stuff there. It's the adventure capital of the world. It's the home of the bungee jump, and you've got jet boating. You can go up on the Shotover River. You can go up on the Kaiwara River, And so Dad and Brad went on the Kaiwara River while my uncle, because we met my aunt and uncle in Queenstown, and Dad and the guys all went off to do the jet boating. They did the one where you get on at the wharf in Queenstown. You actually spend an hour on the water at this one, and they take up the Kawarau River. And the other one does the shot. So you get on a van, you drive 15 minutes out, you spend 30 minutes on the river, and then van back. This one, you get on it in the harbour in Queenstown, and off you go. And so what us women did is that we went up to a vantage point where we could see over the river and see the guys and all of that. But near that area is a place called the Queenstown Dried Flower Shop, which I absolutely love this store. You can get great potpourri in there. At one point, I had a wicker hat that had beautiful dried flower arrangement around it. I also had another small piece that you could put on a dresser or whatever. Really, really, really cool stuff, all done with dried flowers and all that sort of stuff. And so we did that, and then we went and watched the guys, and we saw them coming back. So that's when we headed back to Queenstown and met them up at the wharf. We were supposed to go to the Wanaka Air Show. I love the Wanaka Air Show. It happens on the even years over Easter weekend on the even years. And so this was 2002, which was one. And I was like, yes, because I hadn't been in a while. And I was looking forward to going and seeing the Spitfires and the Mustangs and the Corsairs and the Messerschmitts and the Zeros and all of these warbirds, all these planes from World War II, see them flying and dogfighting and all of this and whatever other visiting aircraft that they had. It's a huge show. And the Wanaka airfield is on a natural plateau, and it has a valley that runs across the backside of the airport. So when they are dogfighting, when the warbirds are dogfighting and they get hit, they do this nosedive thing where they come down. Here's the plateau here. Audience is over on this side, and they've actually got like a natural grandstand. There's a hill. So you've got the airfield, then there's the road, and then there's this huge paddock that you do the parking in. Then there's this big hill that goes up, and there's people that will actually take their RVs up and vans and stuff and sit on the top of the hill, and they get a phenomenal view. But we like the years that I went, we would go and sit up on the banks after we'd walked all the static display and stuff for the air show. We'd be sitting up on the hill there and watching everything. And you got a great view, much better view than those that paid to sit in the grandstand by the airfield. Just saying. But anyway, you got the Plato here. The plane gets hit and it comes up and it nosedives. And just as it passes the edge of the plateau, because it nosedives down into the valley there and then just flies away and comes up somewhere else out of sight, where it stays flying around there in circles until it's time for everybody to come back and get together again. But just as it passes the edge of the plateau, there's these explosions that go off like it's hit the deck, and they actually fly down into the valley and fly around until it's time for them all to come up. And then basically the warbird planes are just doing these humongous figures of 8 as they just fly around at the end of the air show. It's time to leave and everything else. And so we would just stay sitting on the hill there on the natural grandstand, watching them just fly around and everything else until a lot of the traffic had gone. And then we'd get in the car and go. But so I was looking forward to going and seeing the air show. I hadn't seen it for a few years. I've been talking it up with Brad about how great this air show was and everything else. This was my biggest disappointment of the entire trip. They were predicting rain. Me, having been a past member of the going to the air show, knows that weather will always be fine on air show days. Absolutely. It doesn't matter what the weather forecaster said. He said it could be snow, there's going to be thunderstorms and hail. It will not stop anybody going to that show because they all know on the day of the show, it is always sunshine. Always. And so we wake up the next morning, there's threats of rain, all this. I says, no, you don't get it. It's going to be fine. And they're like, no, nobody wanted to go. Nobody. And I did get upset. I was crying because I really wanted to go. It was the one thing that I absolutely, without a doubt, absolutely had to do while we were there, because I didn't know when I'd get back again to do it again. And I got voted out. Everybody else, my aunt, my uncle, my parents, Brad, all voted me out. We weren't going. I was beyond disappointed. I was so upset. And then that evening, we're sitting watching the 6 o'clock news, and they're showing and I'm telling them, it is not going to rain. It is going to be sunshine. It's going to be full sunshine, not a cloud in the sky, blue skies. I said, it's always like this on air show days. It doesn't matter what the weather forecaster says. It's going to be this way. It's always like that. It's never rained out. They've never had rain on these days. And I said, and I'm trying to convince them. They're like, no, we sit and watch the 6 o'clock news every day. Of course, they do the thing on the air. They do the news article on the air show, clear blue skies and sunshine. And I just sat there. I was pissed. I went, told you so. And but the ground would have been muddy. We would have had to walk in. I said, no, it wouldn't. I said, nope. So that was my biggest disappointment of that trip, is I didn't get to see the issue. But anyway, we're past that. Yeah, it still irks me a little bit. So then we went up to Christchurch, and in Christchurch, we got to go and visit the RNZAF Museum, which I hadn't been to in a few years since it had opened, since I was based at Wigram, which is where actually, no, I went after I'd been based there, because it opened while I was based at RNZAF base Wigram, which no longer exists, but you can see where the gate is because it's right there it's where the gate used to be, because it was right by the entrance to the museum. Like you go through the gate and into the thing. And so we went and saw the RNZAF Museum, which was pretty cool. It kind of made up for the air show, but I'd much rather see the planes flying around. But anyway, then we went to the Antarctic Centre, and got to have a look at that and all the stuff there. Where did we go after that? We then went back to Wellington. Then we went up to New Plymouth and spent some time up there. Went through Pukekura Park, which is a park from my teenage years. Absolutely love that area. Then we went back up to Auckland, and on the way we stopped at the Waitomo Caves and did the whole glowworm thing through there. And then we went back to, where do we go? Auckland, Taupo home. Oh, that's Mum and Dad doing that bit. Oh, when we went back to Auckland, yeah, Mum and Dad had their bit going back home on that one. So we actually flew out of Auckland and back home again. So that was our honeymoon. My parents came with us on a honeymoon, and we had a blast. So, like I said, the only black mark was, and it probably still bugs me now, was the Waitomo, was the Air Force, was the air show was the only thing that was the black mark on the entire. Otherwise, we had an amazing time. Brad absolutely loved it. He got to see a lot of the places. Lord of the Rings had come out the November beforehand. I think it was November beforehand, in 2001. And then at the end of 2002, part 2 was coming out. And so Brad got to see a lot of when we were driving around, he could see a lot of the scenery, a lot of the places that that Lord of the Rings had been filmed in. And that year when we went to the movie theater to see the second part, I'm sitting there going, Brad, you've been there. You've seen that. I was pointing out all the scenic spots that he had been to and seen when we were touring around New Zealand. So we had a fantastic time on our honeymoon. And that was another thing I found was our honeymoon itinerary. So what memories are you digging up as you're doing your spring cleaning? We are getting into spring, so there is spring cleaning going on. So what memories are you digging up? Share them, write about them, just do a video on them, whatever. It's just record those memories in some way so that future generations can look back and see some of the things that you used to do just on day-to-day things, some of the vacations you used to take, all that sort of stuff. But with that, I am out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. because I have my LinkedIn class tomorrow night. Yes, so 6:30 p.m. tomorrow evening. Hei konera.